Hello everyone! Today, I want to share with you a very simple story, yet one that carries a lot of emotions about my life and Hung's peaceful days that are still deeply meaningful in the familiar countryside. Stories like this may not have anything grand or dramatic, but they are made up of very real, very close moments that, when I look back, I realize those small things are what truly create a complete life in their own way. That day, I decided to go into the forest to look for a familiar type of root that people in my hometown often dig up to eat or sell. It wasn't the first time I had done this kind of work, but every time I stepped into the forest, there was always a mix of anticipation and quiet excitement. The familiar path leading into the woods was still the same narrow trails weaving through trees, the sound of leaves rustling underfoot. Everything created a space that felt both peaceful and alive. For many people, it might just be an ordinary job, but for me, each trip into the forest feels like a small journey where I not only work but also immerse myself in nature, sensing the subtle changes of the world around me. I had hoped that day would be a lucky one, that I would find plenty of good roots to both sell and bring home for a warm family meal. Those simple thoughts stayed with me along the way, making each step feel lighter. I told myself that if I just tried a little harder, stayed a little more patient, maybe today would be different. Maybe it would be a truly fruitful day. But things don't always go as expected. As I went deeper into the forest, I began to realize that most of the roots I found had already passed their best stage. They had grown taller, their stems harder, no longer holding the tenderness and flavor of those at their prime. There were moments when I spotted a large, beautiful root and felt a spark of excitement, only for that feeling to quickly turn into disappointment when I got closer and checked it carefully. I realized I had arrived just a little too late. That sense of regret didn't come just once. It repeated itself many times throughout my search. There were places where, if I had come earlier, I might have found younger, better roots, more valuable to sell. The more I walked, the more I understood that foraging in the forest is not just about being hardworking or persistent. It depends greatly on timing, on observation, and sometimes even on a bit of luck, something I cannot always control. Even so, I didn't give up. I kept going, kept searching, step by step, just as I had done so many times before. After a while, I finally found a few roots that I felt satisfied with. Not a lot, and not the best ones, but enough to make me feel that the trip wasn't entirely in vain. At least I still brought back something for my effort. When I looked at what I had gathered, I no longer felt as much regret as before. Instead, there was a lighter feeling, as if I had accepted that not every day will turn out exactly as I hope. Some days, it's enough just to keep going, enough not to stop. The afternoon slowly approached. The sunlight was no longer harsh like at noon, but softer, stretching gently through the trees and creating a peaceful scene. I quickly packed up and prepared to head home. On the way back, my thoughts turned to dinner. I thought about making bamboo shoot dishes, something simple yet always comforting, especially because I know Hung really enjoys it. Those thoughts made my steps a little faster, not out of exhaustion, but from the eagerness to return home. After a long day of work, being able to go back, to prepare a meal for someone you care about, is something so simple yet so fulfilling. Once I got home, I immediately started cooking. Washing the bamboo shoots, preparing the ingredients, wrapping them, everything flowed naturally, as if I had done it countless times before. And yet, it was that familiarity that brought me a sense of peace that's hard to describe. After a day in the forest, thinking about gain and loss, enough and not enough, returning to the small kitchen made everything feel slower, gentler. I paid attention to every step, not because I wanted it to be complicated, but because I wanted the meal to feel complete in my own way. To me, cooking is not just about preparing food. It is also how I show care, how I preserve the warmth of my small family. It doesn't need to be anything grand, a meal made with sincerity is already enough to make everything meaningful. And as everything gradually came together, I suddenly realized that even though the day hadn't gone exactly as I expected, what I gained still carried its own special value. From the journey into the forest, the moments of regret, to returning home and preparing dinner, everything connected naturally, like small pieces coming together to form a simple yet complete day. In the evening, as the fading light of the day slowly disappeared and the outside grew quieter, Hung and Duk returned home. The familiar sound of footsteps echoed softly at the front porch. The door opened, and in that very moment, I could clearly feel a warmth spreading throughout the small space. There was no need for anything grand, just simple greetings, familiar glances exchanged between us, and that alone was enough to make my heart feel lighter after a long day. Duk politely greeted me, his voice still carrying that innocent tone so natural to him. Then, without being asked, he quickly helped me set up the meal. Such small actions, yet they made me feel more clearly than ever the bond within our family. It wasn't something spoken aloud, but rather something shown through natural habits and quiet care that had formed over time. It was these simple things that I treasured the most. That evening meal unfolded in a truly comfortable atmosphere. Everyone sat together around the table, not in a rush, not hurried, just eating and talking after a day of work. The conversations were nothing particularly special, yet they made the meal feel much closer and warmer. Hung picked up a piece of bamboo shoot, ate slowly, then smiled and complimented my cooking. Even though he noticed a slight bitterness in the taste, there was no hint of criticism in his voice, only a gentle remark filled with understanding. I didn't hide anything and simply shared about my trip to the forest earlier, about how I had gone at the wrong time, and the bamboo shoots were no longer as tender as I had hoped. As I spoke, I no longer felt the regret I had felt in the forest. Instead, I accepted it as a normal part of life. And perhaps what mattered most was not whether the dish was perfect, but the feeling of the whole family sitting together, sharing these small things. During the meal, Hung slowly shared news that he had probably been waiting to tell for a long time. He said that in just one more week, he would be transferred back to the hometown for good. Hearing those words, I couldn't hide my joy. A sense of relief quietly filled my heart, as if something I had been waiting for was finally about to become real. No more days of distance, no more waiting. The family would soon be closer together again. Duk also couldn't hide his excitement. He talked about being able to live near Tony, to play together, to grow up side by side in a closer environment. His eyes lit up as he spoke, and I realized that the happiness wasn't just for the adults, it spread to the children as well. The atmosphere at the table grew even warmer. We began talking about future plans, small plans that carried so much hope. Nothing too far-reaching, just simple wishes, to be closer, to spend ordinary yet complete days together. I also told Hung about a bamboo shoot hill I knew, a place where bamboo shoots grew naturally, without any cost, where with just a bit of effort and a longer walk, one could harvest quite a lot. When I mentioned it, I simply thought of it as a good opportunity to improve our meals and maybe earn a little extra income. But as soon as I finished speaking, Hung's expression changed slightly. He brought up the time I had gotten lost in the forest before. His voice wasn't loud, but it was filled with concern. It wasn't blame, nor was it restriction. It was a very real fear, coming from his desire not to see me face danger again. Listening to him, I suddenly understood that sometimes words that seem like resistance are actually protection in the only way he knows how. He said he couldn't feel at ease if I continued going alone, no matter how good the opportunity might be. Those words made me pause for a moment, not because I felt held back, but because I could feel the sincerity behind them. Then he suggested that when he had time, he would go with me. Only with him there would he feel at ease letting me return to the forest. Hearing that, a feeling I couldn't quite describe rose within me, a mix of joy, relief, and a deeper sense of companionship. I had always loved going up the hills, immersing myself in nature, but after getting lost before, I couldn't deny there was still a bit of hesitation inside me. And now, knowing that he would be there, everything suddenly felt safer, steadier. The two of us began discussing the trip in more detail. The path was quite far, requiring hours of climbing, so if we were to go, we would need to prepare carefully, from food and water to planning the timing properly. These seemingly small, ordinary conversations made me realize that life is not only about big moments, but also about the careful preparation for simple things. And it didn't stop there. Hung also shared another plan. Before moving back home completely, he wanted to organize a meal to say goodbye to his colleagues. He wanted it to be a proper gathering where he could express his gratitude and bid farewell to those who had been with him throughout the years. As he spoke, his voice softened slightly, as if recalling memories from the past. He asked me to help prepare for that meal. Even though I knew it would be quite a lot of work, many dishes, many tables, I didn't hesitate. I understood that it wasn't just a meal, but an important milestone in his life. And being able to contribute even a small part made me feel that it was meaningful. At the same time, we also began discussing rearranging the house once he returned. Perhaps we would need to build another bed, or buy a few more things so everyone could have a more comfortable living space. These plans were not complicated, but they carried a clear sense of preparing for a new phase, a life where we would be closer, more connected. And through all these flowing conversations, I suddenly realized that everything was slowly changing in a very gentle way. Not loudly, not hurriedly, but enough to make me believe that the days ahead would be more peaceful, more complete, a time where everyone could be together, building something simple yet deeply meaningful. At the end of the meal, when everyone had finished eating and the lively conversations gradually faded, the atmosphere in the house became quieter in the most natural way. The soft sounds of dishes being cleared away, the gentle footsteps, everything seemed to slow down after such a warm evening. I remained seated for a while longer, not in a hurry to get up, as if I wanted to hold on to that sense of completeness just a little longer. At that moment, Duke didn't leave right away like he usually did. He quietly walked over and sat down beside me, slowly and carefully. There was no rush, none of the usual carefree movements of a child. He stayed silent, his eyes lowered as if he had been thinking about something for a long time. That silence didn't make me uncomfortable. Instead, it made me pay closer attention, as if I could sense that he was about to say something important. I didn't ask. I just sat there, waiting. After a while, Duke softly spoke. His voice was small, not loud, but strangely clear. Each word came out slowly, not hurried, as if he had carefully thought it through before speaking. He said that, ever since he started living with me, he had been very happy. Not a loud or fleeting kind of happiness, but a quiet feeling that stayed with him day after day. He mentioned meals like the one we had just shared. Moments that seemed so ordinary, like me placing food on his plate, asking if he had eaten enough, or simply giving him a caring glance, had become things that made him feel warm inside. Those small actions, which felt routine to me, seemed to carry a much deeper meaning for him. Duke said that before, he didn't have many moments like that. As he spoke, his voice remained steady, without breaking, yet I could feel a quiet emptiness hidden beneath his words. He didn't need to say much, didn't need long explanations. Just a few simple sentences were enough for me to understand that what he is now is something he once lacked. Then he slowly lifted his gaze to look at me. There was a mix of hope and hesitation in his eyes. It wasn't fully confident. It carried a quiet fear, as if he was unsure whether what he was about to say would be accepted. That moment lasted only a few seconds, but I could clearly feel how nervous he was. Duck hesitated, as if gathering courage. And then he asked me a question. Could he call me Mom? The moment those words left his lips, I froze. It wasn't that I didn't hear him clearly, it was that I never expected such a simple question to touch my heart so deeply. The sounds around me seemed to disappear in that instant. No noise, no scattered thoughts, only his words echoing clearly in my mind, filled with emotion. I didn't know how to respond right away. In that brief second, so many feelings rushed in at once: surprise, tenderness, and a kind of happiness I couldn't quite put into words. A simple question, yet it carried all the trust, all the longing that a child could place in someone standing before him. Tears quietly fell, not from sadness, but from overwhelming emotion, from the realization that the small things I had done, without ever expecting them to be seen in such a meaningful way, had become something so important to someone else. I looked at Duck. I didn't need many words. I didn't need a long answer. I simply reached out and gently pulled him into an embrace. It wasn't tight, but it carried everything I wanted to say, that I understood, that I accepted, that I cherished this bond just as much. And then I nodded. Just a small nod, yet it held all the agreement, all the love, all the connection that didn't need to be spoken aloud. Duck didn't say anything more, but I could feel the relief in him, as if something he had carried in his heart for a long time had finally been spoken and received. That moment passed quickly, but it stayed for a long time. And perhaps it was in that very moment that I realized something I had never truly thought about before. That family is not only what is given from the beginning, not only the relationships defined by familiar names. Sometimes, family is made of the people who choose to stay, who choose to care, who choose to love one another in the simplest ways. It is when one person dares to open their heart, and another is willing to receive it. It is when empty spaces are slowly filled, not with grand gestures, but with sincerity built day by day. And from that moment on, I understood that some bonds do not need to begin with blood, yet they can still become sacred in their own way. As long as there is love, that place can be called a family. And perhaps, after everything that has happened, I've come to realize that happiness isn't something distant or grand. Sometimes, happiness is simply coming home after a long day, sitting down at a warm meal, being heard and being loved in the most simple and genuine ways. If you've watched until this point, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to my story. If this story has touched your heart, don't forget to like the video to support me, leave a comment to share your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next stories. See you again in the next videos, where we will continue these emotional journeys together.
Xin chào mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Nay thì mình đưa tới mọi người video về câu chuyện của Hoài Ca và Hùng. Video hôm nay thì diễn ra rất là êm đềm và hạnh phúc, kể về việc Hoài Ca đi vào rừng kiếm măng. Bây giờ thì ở chỗ mình bắt đầu có mưa và đã có măng. Còn bữa nay thì Đức đã về ở chung với Hoài Ca và Hùng rồi. Và tuy Đức là con riêng của Hùng nhưng mà Hoài Ca cũng yêu thương cô không khác gì con đẻ của mình. Và có một bất ngờ ở buổi tối sau buổi tối sau khi mọi người ăn cơm chiều, đó là Đức đã tâm sự với Hoài Ca và đã gọi Hoài Ca là mẹ. Điều này khiến cho Hùng và Hoài Ca vô cùng hạnh phúc, cũng như là đây là mong chờ của Hùng từ khá là lâu rồi. Tại vì anh cũng muốn là Đức có thể hòa hợp hơn, cũng như là cởi mở hơn, cũng như là muốn mang đến cho cậu bé một cuộc sống tốt nhất. Vì dù sao đây cũng là con ruột của anh. Vậy thì liệu mọi chuyện tiếp theo sẽ như thế nào, và Hùng và Hoài Ca sẽ tiếp tục trên con đường hạnh phúc của mình ra sao, thì mình mời mọi người đón xem và tập vào ngày mai nhé. Tạm biệt mọi người.